When I first played Phoenix Wright a little over a year ago, I have been interested in a genre of video games that I've never really given a second thought about, that being the visual novel genre of video games. I mean, if I wanted to experience a story through visuals and text alone, I would just watch an anime or read up on some manga series or light novels. Heck, I even pick up a book every now and again. Ain't that something? This whole disinterest in the series started with a little game called X-Blaze, a prequel story to one of my favorite fighting game franchises, Blaze Blue. All I thought was, oh, it's just a story. Whatever. Now, of course, I've grown past that. Phoenix Wright emotionally destroyed me as a series, and I am now patiently waiting for the newest entry. I've also started Danganronpa because I guess my soul needed the emotional trauma. But there's a series that has somehow always eluded me until very recently. That being the Zero Escape series. Specifically the first entry, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. Or 999 as most people call it. An escape room murder mystery game with some supernatural elements possibly sprinkled around with a lovable cast of characters and a total playtime of only a few hours? How have I never played this game before? I don't know. But recently, a Steam sale put the whole trilogy on sale for a few bucks, so I decided to hop in and give the game a shot. And with most of the people who follow me telling me it's a game that I will purely enjoy and that is simply amazing, I was stoked to sink my teeth into it. So how did it hold up? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about now. The Nonary games have begun, and the clock has started ticking. Developed by Chunsoft and published by Axis Games, 999 was released here in North America in November of 2010 and a year earlier in Japan in December of 2009. What's interesting is that looking into this game's release in Japan, it apparently didn't sell too well with the Japanese audience. However, here in North America, the game became somewhat of a cult classic, which helped push the series to make 2 more sequels and add that to its roster. The director of the game, I'm going to butcher this, was Kotaro Uchikoshi, who had also worked on previous visual novel projects before even working for Chunsoft and creating the scenarios for 999. He wanted to make a game where players would also be interacting with the world's environments by utilizing puzzle aspects of the game's major gameplay sections. According to what I found on the internet, he used the idea of a British author named Rupert Sheldrake, who conjured the theory of morphic resonance, which I will explain to the best of my abilities as we go into this review, but for now, just know it's basically wacky pseudoscience. Anyways, this somewhat leads into the main story of 999. You play as Junpei, not that one, another Junpei, a college student who has somehow made it into a bad situation. He wakes up in a locked room which seems to resemble a ship cabin. As he wakes up and tries to gather his thoughts on his current situation, he notices a door with a big number 5 on it, and alongside that, an item which resembles a watch attached to his wrist that he just can't seem to remove. Before he can really start to grasp the situation, the window in his room bursts and water begins to start filling the room. The game begins with drowning being a main threat. My personal favorite. A new objective comes to mind, which is find the way out. As you explore the room, Junpei's memories start to return. He remembers entering his apartment and coming back from school. When he does, however, he meets a person wearing a gas mask. That person knocks him out, and the next thing he knows, he's where he is now. Putting 2 and 2 together, he surmises that the masked person must be the one who brought him here. After searching the room and solving a few puzzles, Junpei finds his way out of his room, but is nowhere near the clear. As he makes his move, he finds other people on the ship. 8 others to be exact. We find out that they all essentially share the same story. They saw the masked person, and the next thing they knew, they awoke on the ship. Then, through the intercom, they hear a familiar voice, the one who trapped them in this situation. This person is known as Zero. Zero brought you all here to take part in something he calls the Nonary game. The rules are simple. Zero gives the cast 9 hours to find the exit of a ship, which he claims is behind a number 9 door somewhere on the ship. But the rules do get quite extreme as well. Get ready, folks, because math is about to make an appearance in this game, and let me tell you, it ain't fucking leaving. The game focuses around the mathematical idea of the digital root, which in very, very simplistic terms is basically taking a row of numbers, adding them up, then if the sum of that is more than 2 digits, 1, 1 for example, or 11, adding those 2 numbers, 1, 1, will then gain the digital root. So for example, if you take 1, 2, 3, 4, the sum of adding all those numbers make 10. Then adding 1 plus 0 gives you 1. Therefore, the digital root of 1, 2, 3, 4 is 1. Trust me, once you start to work with it, it does start to make more and more sense. I hate math. Anyways, this is important because throughout the game there are doors with numbers on them, as we've mentioned before, and each of the people on the ship have a number attached to them as well, 1 through 9. Junpei also finds out that a childhood friend of his is also on this ship, which he doesn't seem as coincidental. Oh, right, I forgot this. I said that Zero gave them 9 hours to get off the ship, right? Well, what happens if they don't? Well, it's simple. The bombs that he placed in their stomachs will explode, killing them instantly. No big deal, really. He also gives them a set of rules. The two major ones being only that 3 to 5 people can go through a door at a time, and of course, their digital root must equal to the door's number. What happens if they go in alone, let's say? Well, simple. Kaboom! Which is illustrated by the character only known as number 9. So from here the plot seems pretty simple, and it is for the most part. Find a way off the ship and work together to solve each of the door's puzzle rooms and try to find out just who is behind Zero's mask and just what the Nonary games really are and why they specifically have been chosen to take part in it. There is more that gets brought up throughout the game's story, such as the idea that the ship is an identical replica of the Titanic, or to be specific, one of the sister ships that was built around the same time as the Titanic, and the whole pseudoscience thing I mentioned before. Basically, the idea is that life forms or other forms of elements in organic life are somehow connected to each other in some odd, mysterious ways. Thoughts and adaptive abilities are somehow connected to one another, meaning if one experiences a change or reaction to something, then all of them start to. Many things in these games are thought to be connected to this phenomena, but whether it all means something is kind of up for grabs, at least in the beginning. But it is an interesting way to give the player new thoughts and ideas when looking at the plot and trying to solve the mystery that they're all presented with. Well, that pretty much covers the basis of the game plot. TLDR, 9, or I guess 8 people now, are stuck on a ship, and with the looming sense of death hovering over them and a time limit to motivate them, finding the exit is their only solace. Will they be successful? Only their wits and uneasiness will decide. Alright, so like I said before, a major, and I do mean major part of the game's structure is that of a visual novel, which means you're gonna be seeing a lot of text, and most time reading a lot of text. But I don't think this is a bad thing. Back in my Phoenix Wright review, I stated that the reason it's so much fun to sit down and read or play is that the wording and language used is very simple for people to pick up and play, but it still feels rewarding for them when they solve a case or figure out a major hole in the story because they just read it themselves. 999, however, is a bit more, let's say, adult. Its language is much more obscene, with every character swearing at least once or twice per paragraph. Seriously, when I saw the word fuck appear, all I thought was, I missed a golden age in the DS library. And its writing style is much more descriptive, and as I'm sure you've guessed before, with me talking about the mathematics and pseudo-psychological science, it's all just plain weird. But honestly, the game also does a good job of not always taking itself seriously and hitting all the basic anime tropes that you kind of forget about the weird stuff until it's brought up again. But you don't feel lost, as when it's brought up, it's very descriptive and well explained. This game was rated M, so it's no surprise that its original audience was aimed for young adults, so it makes sense for them to take this approach. And since it's not you solving multiple cases one after the other, and instead of just focusing on one major riddle and closely coming towards the answer of that riddle, I'm okay with the game taking as much time as it needs to explain such things. And it's not to say you'll be looking at nothing, as there are character portraits that are partially animated when speaking or performing actions, and to top it off, the HD ports which came to Steam and other game consoles included voice acting for the first game, and by God, this game may have the best voice acting I've ever seen in a game, with maybe Xenoblade taking number 1. In all seriousness though, the voice acting in 999 is sublime, and it makes every character seem more alive and real. The change in tones and moods are spot on, and even some of the more emotional scenes are done perfectly well, and it made me worry about the current situation. And since we're on the topic, can I just talk about how much I love the character designs in this game? Because I do. If the art looks vaguely familiar, it's because the artist Kino Nishimura took over for the character designs. If you're wondering who that is, does the name Street Fighter 3rd Strike and Street Fighter 4 sound familiar? Because yeah, they worked on that. Making each character stand out amongst each other, especially in a game where you're constantly wondering if one of them could possibly be the person behind the situation at hand, is a tricky thing. But luckily the game does give you enough time with each character to really help you, the player, understand and maybe even start to like each of them. Well, with characters and stuff out of the way, the main focus of the game is not only its storytelling, but also its immersive gameplay. Looking at the footage, you might have been a bit confused as to what this game is truly trying to be. And to that I have a simple answer. It's an escape room game. Every door you enter throughout the game will act as an escape room puzzle. So your job is to go through each of the rooms and find a series of clues or items which will ultimately lead you to the exit. In all honesty, the gameplay isn't all too out there in terms of things you can do. You can pick up items and examine them. You can even combine said items, which will either make a new item to use in whatever room you're in, or reveal a new clue / item that again can be used in that room. It's all basic stuff and it really doesn't do too much to stand out. What the game does do though is introduce new things to the player and lets them slowly understand the new concepts being brought to them. And to fully explain why I enjoyed this mechanic so much, I have to talk about my favorite moment gameplay wise. I'm gonna go on for a bit here, so if you don't want to hear me ramble, skip to this time code, but I just gotta talk about this. Anyways, so in one of the rooms of the game, we are introduced to something called the hexadecimal numbers. In short, and to the best of my ability, this basically means that letters replace numbers when using the base 10 number sequence 1 to 10, so you would have 1 to 9, then after 9 you would have 6 letters like A to F. After the letters, 10 will then rejoin the sequence. A to F would represent 10 to 15, A equaling 10, F equaling 15, which will make the 10 in the hexadecimal sequence 16. I'm probably messing it up here, but trust me when I say the game does a much better job at teaching you, better than I can. Anyways, we solved the puzzle of the room, and I thought that would be the end of it. Well, near the end of the first route that I took, more on that later, there was another puzzle which had to do with numbers 1 through 9, and using the digital root of those numbers to crack a code. And after doing more math than I have done in like the last 6 years of my life, I solved the code. And this happened. A new puzzle appeared and this took me by surprise because this one isn't fully explained to you. It just kind of happens. There's an F, you have 9 pins and a 3x3 grid. And here is where I felt like an absolute genius. If you remember the hexadecimal number sequence from before, then you know that F equals 15 and that's nothing too special. But okay, now you have a number. What does that do? Do you have to maybe find a digital root of 15 using all these numbers? No, it seemed really confusing, but then, well, has anyone ever seen the anime Spiral: The Bonds of Reasoning? If you haven't, it's fine. The only reason I bring it up is because this is exactly how I solved the puzzle. In short, Spiral is a mystery show / manga which follows the main protagonists A and B, solving murders and such. In one case, there was a bomb involved and they had to solve a bomb puzzle to deactivate it. There was a 3x3 number panel and a turtle, and this is where stuff starts to seem familiar. Well, excluding the turtle. They find the solution as the 2 clues they are given, again, the grid and the turtle, is towards the tale of how the magic square was found. An old Chinese legend tells of an emperor who found a turtle after a great flood. This turtle remarkably had a 3x3 panel style shell. But what's more interesting is that the dots that the emperor spotted on each of the panels resembled numbers. Basically, all the panels had numbers on them, being 1 through 9. And even more incredibly was the discovery that adding these numbers vertically or horizontally always added to 15. And that is the magic square. A 3x3 grid in which numbers placed in it will always equal 15 horizontally or vertically. And if I haven't bored you enough, this is where my mind just blew out of the water, because the puzzle I was facing was just that, a magic square. You know who figured that out? I did, all on my own. All because I watched anime. Hell yeah! I know it was ranty, but this whole experience alone pretty much describes why I like this aspect of the game so much. It tells you what it needs to, but if needed, the game will push you in the right direction. It's amazing that this was released on the DS because the scope that this game goes to sometimes are downright genius. It's not all fun and games though. There's a few puzzles that kind of bothered me in their execution, and sure, some of the dialogue can go on a bit more longer than it feels like it should, but really, I don't mind, as when the game shines, you just kind of forget about all that. The game tests knowledge and understanding, and hey, I like that a lot. And it wouldn't be a video if I didn't talk about it, but damn, I love June so much. She's just the sweetest flower, and the stupid anime love thing is dumb, but I love it. I will say this. It would be a crime if I were to stick to my normal routes. If I were to lay out everything that this game's ending has to offer, then I would be disservicing not only the fan base of the series, but to those who want to check it out themselves. So while I won't talk about the ending as a whole, I do want to talk about one major component to it, and that is the genius use of the other endings. While some would consider this a major spoiler, I would consider it a warning. And yes, 999 does have multiple endings. But here's the thing, you aren't going to be getting the real ending on your very first shot. Believe me, I know. All the choices I made on my original playthrough mirrored that of the ones you would take for the true ending. However, since I had not seen the ending prior to the true one, I couldn't view it. I instead got another ending only known as the knife ending. Now, most of the endings are meaningless to an extent, as they have no real purpose other than just serve as a false ending. However, that's not all they're there for. See, while these endings ultimately don't lead you on the right path, they do give you incentives to go down different paths that you haven't taken before. After you view an ending, you actually get this chart, which in ways shows you the paths that you haven't gone in yet. So let's say you have the choice to pick between door 5 and door 4. On your first playthrough, you picked 5, so now on your second go, you would probably have more of an incentive to go to door 4. And yeah, this is kind of another drawback. You do have to replay the game multiple times, 3 if you want to see everything. However, on the Steam version at least, you can fast forward through most of the dialogue in the game, so getting a new branching path doesn't take too long. And there's even chances to see brand new character interactions, which actually brings me to my final reason as to why the endings are brilliant. See, in each ending, you'll actually learn something new about each person on the ship. So let's say throughout your journey, you learn that character A is the killer, and in that ending, you learn that he kills character B. Then on your next playthrough, you see that both character A and character B have a section where they join together, and that's what leads to A killing B. Now, your instinct is to immediately go into that direction to see if you can stop that exchange. Now, while this is a brilliant use of replaying the game, giving you new things to figure out and explore, and you're not really feeling like you're playing the game over again, it's also very story relevant, which is kind of a key factor to the story's true ending. Trust me, when you pick up the game for yourself and see one unfolds, you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. But the ending is really good in my opinion, and the game mechanics to follow along with it is even better. 999 is an emotional experience I truly wasn't ready for. This game was well worth the purchase, and I can't wait to get into its 2 sequels when I have the spare time. I don't think I can ever fully express why I adore this game so much more than I already have. Its characters are amazing, its music is catchy that I'm still humming some of the tunes today, and the puzzle solving while requiring math of all things is still damn fun and brain scratching. If you see this on sale on Steam or somewhere in the wild in the DS, I can honestly say you would not be wasting your time on this one. And that's all for today, folks. Tune in next time when I talk about some more weeb stuff. That's right, I take a look at a game that I've been wanting to do for a couple of years now. We're gonna look at Fire Emblem.